Before I begin, I just want to ask a quick question of the audience of how many people know exactly where you came from or where your ancestors originated? You could raise them high. Okay, mostly everyone. Well, for me, this is a concept that I struggled with and still am struggling with, as well as many other Black Americans in the United States. When I was in elementary school, I attended Watson C. Comley Elementary. It was a nice little elementary school in the far northeast of Philadelphia. We had our school trips and bake sales and school fairs and things like that. The average household income in this area was about $70,000, so pretty good. Schools are funded mostly from local property taxes, so if you're surrounded by million-dollar homes or things like that, then you're going to have a lot of property tax revenue being fed to your school. Unfortunately, to attend a school like that in kindergarten, I was the only brown face in my entire classroom. So imagine only 5 of you in this audience being Black. That's how I felt every day when I was at school, since I was the only one in my class of 90. In second grade, I remember being assigned a Culture Day project. Our second grade teacher asked us to put a picture of a flag on a poster board and talk about our cultural traditions and dances and things like that. When I went home and I told my mom about the assignment, she told me that I couldn't complete it because I didn't have a flag to represent and I didn't have any cultural traditions or dances to talk about before the 1900s. Now, being 18, I realized how many things slavery has actually stripped away from me. And as I grew older, I wondered, why did I go to school with all white people? And now I realize schools filled with faces that looked like me didn't have those consistent teachers, textbooks, art classes, and things like that. If I had went to a school like Strawberry Mansion, for example, Strawberry Mansion is one of the poorer neighborhoods in Philadelphia. They have a sign on their door that says, "Come back to school." They have 100% minority enrollment, 97% of those minorities being Black, and 99% economically disadvantaged. The socioeconomic status in this area is only about $20,000, which allows for little to no funding for the schools to have extra college preparatory and SAT prep skills. The students in those schools have to walk through metal detectors every morning. And we wonder why in 2018, if slavery was 400 years ago, why do we still have this educational attainment gap and disparity? The answer to that is historical oppression. During times of slavery, slaves were not allowed to learn to read or write. The South Carolina Act of 1740 stated that who shall hereafter teach or cause any slave or slaves to be taught or write in any form will be fined $100, and in some cases even killed if they were giving education to a bunch of slaves. Even 200 years after this, the NAACP was protesting school segregation. There were Black schools and white schools. The white schools had regular government funding, and the Black schools had minimal funding. You see that the little boy has a sign that says, "Why treat our children like prisoners?" And I have a theory that the public education system is feeding directly into the prison industrial complex. Instead of the government providing the public education system with more money to uplift those minorities being oppressed, instead they are targeting them in schools, and then that money is being fed into the prisons to keep them in the state of inferiority. This is known as the school-to-prison pipeline. The school-to-prison pipeline refers to this growing pattern of tracking students out of educational institutions, primarily zero-tolerance policies, and directly and/or indirectly into adult and juvenile criminal detention centers. So a student will come to school with their pants sagged, and they'll say, well, that's gang activity, or they'll come with a sharp pair of scissors, and they'll say that's weaponry. Some statistics of this are 40% of students expelled from US schools each year are Black. 70% of students involved in in-school arrests or referred to by law enforcement are Black or Latino. Black students are 3.5 times more likely to be suspended than whites. Additionally, Black and Latino students are twice as likely not to graduate high school as whites, and 68% of males in state and federal prison do not have a high school diploma. This can infer that those 68% had to drop out of school or were incarcerated before they even had a chance to graduate. And then for those of us like myself who over the years had to sacrifice our culture in order to get a proper education and who didn't have to go through this in high school, then we're faced with this question: HBCU or PWI? An HBCU being historically Black college or university, and a PWI being predominantly white institution. So how many of you know what Spelman College is, for example? Okay, that's about 2% of the audience. So Spelman College is the #1 HBCU. It's an all-Black women's college in Atlanta. That's a school that I got accepted to. And this is a question that I was faced with just this time last year. I was stuck between whether to go to Spelman College or Carnegie Mellon University. I obviously chose Carnegie Mellon in hopes that I could change this minority rate and statistic. But I wanted to go to Spelman so I could have someone to braid my hair and talk about our grandmom's cooking, but also have great academic resources. But then here I would be exposed to academic resources, but then also have someone who would look at my resume, know the name on it. At Carnegie Mellon now, when I walk through every day, I am faced with societal alienation. When I look around in my classes, I'm the only black female in all of my classes, sometimes the only black person in my classes. This makes it difficult for me to achieve and to climb the socioeconomic ladder. So it's just this constant pattern of us black people having to sacrifice our culture in order to get a proper education. And then we also get backlash from the black community. The black community who is stuck in their community or in that cycle of inferiority may look at others who have tried to achieve as that we're trying to be better than them. And the black people who have surpassed might have an issue with, should we go back and try to help our community, or should we continue to prevail and help ourselves? So as we continue to try to educate ourselves, we're also losing our sense of self. This is this inferiority cycle that I was speaking about. A child is born into poverty, they struggle academically and skill acquisition, they fail to get a job. So then they result to crime or selling drugs, so then they get arrested. That financial trouble keeps them in poverty, then their family's born into poverty, then their child's born into poverty. And this is a cycle that has been continuing for years. So I kind of want to test this in the audience today. Can I have everyone in the audience raise their hands high and keep them there? So I'm going to ask a series of questions. If it applies to you, keep your hand raised. If it does not, put it down. So keep your hand raised if you have ever felt different than someone else. Okay, pretty much everyone. Keep your hand raised if in high school you have ever had a class size larger than 40. Keep your hand raised if you ever had a peer get pregnant at a young age. Keep your hand raised if you have ever felt discriminated against. Keep your hand raised if you ever felt that you couldn't do something or you were told that you couldn't do something because of your race. Now keep your hand raised if one of your peers or family members has ever gotten shot or killed. So look around, and we have about 6, 7 people, and I believe they're all black. So this is the cycle that I'm speaking about, and this is the cycle that still affects our community today. This is an issue that us minorities are discussing every day within our communities because us or our family is going through it, but this conversation needs to be brought into the majority as well. The school-to-prison pipeline needs to be dismantled so that students are being uplifted in school and not pushed down, as well as more government funding into those low socioeconomic schools like Strawberry Mansion so that those students can have an equal chance to succeed. This conversation should be something that everyone discusses, not just minorities, so that we can try to change. And if you see something, that seems like it's not right, or that you see an opportunity for you to step in and change, you should do so. So I hope that we can break this cycle and that minorities can have the same playing field as everyone else. Thank you.